All right, let's get right into it. Picture this. It's March 21st, 1967. We're in War Zone C, a wild, dangerous stretch of jungle northwest of Saigon. And deep inside enemy territory, a small American firebase is about to become the center of one of the most savage and, well, one of the most lopsided battles of the entire Vietnam War.
So here's the situation in a nutshell. You've got 450 American defenders basically in a clearing carved out of the jungle, and they are completely surrounded. Hiding just beyond the trees are 2,500 elite Viet Cong fighters, and their mission is simple: to completely annihilate this base. What unfolds is a brutal 6-hour siege that's going to be defined by some absolutely terrifying tactics, and an outcome that is, well, it's almost hard to believe.
And believe me, this thing escalated incredibly fast. At 6:30 in the morning, the jungle just erupts with over 650 mortar rounds. By 7:11, boom, the eastern perimeter is breached. Less than an hour after that, an American platoon that was caught outside the wire makes the unbelievable decision to charge through the enemy to get back inside. And by 8:25, the whole base is on the verge of collapsing, with Viet Cong just 15 meters away from the artillery guns. 15 meters.
So you have to ask, how did things get this bad, this fast? Well, this wasn't some random firefight. The stage for this potential massacre was set by a massive American operation and a truly fatal miscalculation by the enemy.
It all kicked off with Operation Junction City, which was the largest American operation of the entire war. As you can see right here on this map, the plan was a classic hammer and anvil. You had over 30,000 U.S. and South Vietnamese troops, that's the hammer, smashing into War Zone C to find and destroy COSVN, the communist military headquarters for all of South Vietnam.
In this slide right here, this shows you just how differently each side was thinking. For the Americans, Firebase Gold was basically a forward operating base, a platform for their 17 howitzers to provide fire support. But for the Viet Cong, it was a trap. Their goal was brutally simple: overrun this isolated base, wipe out the artillerymen, and then set up a massive ambush for the American relief column they knew would be coming. And what's truly mind-boggling is that the Viet Cong had seen this exact play before, and they chose to just ignore the warning. Just 11 days earlier, they'd attacked another firebase, Pre-Clock 2. In that fight, the American artillerymen leveled their cannons and fired directly into the charge, killing 197 VC for the loss of only 3 Americans. I mean, it was a dress rehearsal for disaster, but the VC command just gambled that this time, with overwhelming numbers, they'd succeed. A truly fatal miscalculation. Which brings us right back to that moment of collapse at Firebase Gold. The perimeter is breached, the enemy is literally yards away, and the American defenders turn to a desperate, terrifying tactic that would change absolutely everything.
They turned their artillery into the deadliest shotguns in military history. This right here is the M546 Beehive round. Now, normally, these things airburst over enemy formations, but inside each shell are 8,000 tiny steel darts called flechettes. At Firebase Gold, the crews disabled the fuses, leveled their massive 105mm howitzers to fire horizontally, and just unleashed them point-blank into the charging waves of infantry, creating what they called an unstoppable cone of death.
And the man who made that gutsy call was Lieutenant Colonel John Vesey. And I mean, his citation for the Distinguished Service Cross really says it all. While mortars are raining down and the base is being overrun, Vesey is out there on the gun line, rallying his men, organizing repairs, and personally directing this incredibly brutal point-blank defense. Just think about the sheer volume of fire we're talking about here. It's staggering. Under Vesey's command, his men repaired 14 damaged howitzers in the middle of the battle. They fired 40 of those devastating Beehive rounds point-blank. And when those ran out, they just kept going, firing over 2,000 standard high-explosive shells horizontally right into the tree line. But the men inside the firebase weren't the only ones fighting for their lives. At the exact same time, 2 separate relief columns were fighting their way through the jungle to get to them, and one of them was about to pull off a truly incredible feat of battlefield engineering. So they get to the Sui Samat River, and they're blocked. What do? Well, they come up with this wild solution. They take an M113 armored personnel carrier, drive it right into the river, and sink it on purpose. It became a custom-built underwater bridge, strong enough for their heavy M48 tanks to cross over and get back into the fight. Talk about pure American improvisation under fire.
And at 9:12 a.m., the cavalry arrived.
The tanks literally burst through the jungle, their 90mm guns firing canister rounds, which are basically giant shotgun shells, directly into the flanks of the VC assault. At the same time, another infantry column that had marched 4 kilometers through dense jungle hit them from the other side. Suddenly, the trap had failed. The attackers were now the ones caught completely in the open.
By 11:45, the battle was over. The elite 272nd Viet Cong Regiment was completely shattered. The big question is, why? Why did this attack fail so catastrophically?
The answer really starts with this one brutal number. Over 20 to 1. Let that sink in for a second. For every American soldier who died, more than 20 Viet Cong were killed. This wasn't just a defeat for them, it was an absolute annihilation.
And here are the hard numbers behind that ratio. The U.S. lost 31 men killed in action. On the other side, American forces counted 647 enemy bodies on the field, and they estimated another 200 or more were carried away by their retreating comrades. And look at this, they also captured a massive arsenal, enough RPGs, machine guns, and ammo to equip an entire battalion.
So really, this was a catastrophe for the Viet Cong on 3 different levels. You had a tactical failure. They completely underestimated the devastation of point-blank artillery. You had an intelligence failure. They willfully ignored the lesson that they should have learned just 11 days before. And finally, a huge strategic miscalculation, playing right into the American strategy of attrition against fortified positions.
Which leads us to our final, and I think most interesting, question. What happens when your entire strategy is proven to be completely suicidal? Does a catastrophe like the one at Firebase Gold force you to quit? Or does it force you to make an even bigger, even more desperate gamble?
And that, right there, is the ultimate fallout from this battle. The staggering losses at Firebase Gold helped convince the Communist command in Hanoi that these kinds of conventional attacks in the jungle were a dead end. Losing so many native Southern Viet Cong fighters was a blow they couldn't recover from. So they pivoted. They abandoned jungle combat for urban combat, a decision which led directly to the planning of the 1968 Tet Offensive. And what about Lieutenant Colonel John Vesey, the guy who made the call? Well, he survived the battle, kept rising through the ranks, and eventually became chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He's the only draftee in American history to rise all the way from private to the nation's highest military office. A true testament to the kind of leadership that was forged in the desperate, brutal firefight at Firebase Gold.